Good morning, guys. Welcome to day one of Mastering Performance Testing with JMeter tool. So, as a part of this particular session, right, we are going to cover a few important topics. So, first, we are going to start with the project discussion. Once that is done, we are going to cover the what happens once the application is live. And once that part is done, I'll introduce you what the performance testing is, and once that is done, we'll discuss about performance testing life cycle process, which is very important one. And then we'll jump into another important concept called client side and server side metrics. And finally, this session is going to end with Q&A. So this is the agenda for today's session. So let's start with the initial part, that is the project discussion. So what is meant by project discussion here is nothing but, so let us say So this particular project discussion, right, obviously starts with the client. So who is client? So client is nothing but we can consider it as an individual or an organization. So that needs a software product. So for example, right, let us say this particular client is from a retail domain related company. So for them, their requirement is to build one e-commerce website. Okay, they need one software product which is in terms of e-commerce website. So that in order to build that particular website, he is going to approach one software company, right? So once after approaching the software company, group of teams is going to be in touch with him to understand his vision as well as goals and his business objectives. So in this case, right, the client is going to provide his vision, like what they want to achieve with this particular software. And also is going to provide his business objective. That is nothing but the key goals. So in such a way, like they want to increase some sales or improving some efficiency and enhancing the user engagement. So these kind of business objectives he's going to provide it to the business analyst. So to whom he's going to provide his vision and goals as well as business objectives is nothing but to the business analyst. So what the business analyst will do is he's going to be the bridge between the client and the technical teams. So this business analyst person, he's going to have, he or she is going to have a good knowledge on the e-commerce domain or the retail domain. So with that particular knowledge, what these guys are going to do is this business analyst team, they are going to provide the key deliverables as well as the workflows and specifications. And they're going to be the bridge between the client as well as the technical teams here. Right. So key deliverables here is nothing but defining like what features to be built for that particular e-commerce web application. And workflows and specifications is nothing but creating the detailed like flow charts kind of things and requirement documents. Those kind of things are going to be done by the business analyst. So, as a bridge, right, as a bridge between the client as well as the other technical teams, this business analyst is going to finalize the workflows. And once after finalizing those workflows, he's going to handle that workflows to the next team, that is the UI UX design team. So this UI UX design team is nothing but they are going to design the, sorry, they are going to design the user interface, guys. They're going to design the user interface for us, and that user interface is going to be provided to the client and is going to shown to the client. And he's when we are going to get some approval for that user interface. So with the help of that approval, okay, which is going to be given by the client, the next team is going to start working on this particular project. So the next team is going to be the development team. So once the client approves the this particular user UI UX designs and everything, so then that designs are going to be provided to the development team. That means UI UX team is going to simply create the front end part. That means the user is going to see in his particular application, right? Like whatever the user is going to see, the registration page, like login page, those kind of UI, okay, design pages they are going to develop and they are going to provide it to the client. And once if client is going to say, yeah, I'm okay with this, then that is going to be provided to the development team. So development team, what they are going to do is they are going to give the technical architecture, okay, as well as timelines and milestones, and also they will verify the functionality challenges. So what the technical architecture means, they are going to choose the proper frameworks, they are going to choose the proper databases, as well as they are going to provide like the backend systems, how they are interconnected and everything. So that is going to be done by the development team. And also they are going to set up some deadlines for the development phases. And if they are finding any functionality related risks, they are going to identify those particular functionality challenges also. So once after developing that particular application, that web application, for example, so they are going to give that build to the QA team. So QA team is nothing but quality assurance team. So this is where our work is going to be there, right? So in the QA team, obviously, we are going to perform multiple types of testings. So that may be the functional testing or non-functional testing. So some companies, those who have proper insights, right, they will do the functional testing as well as non-functional testing also in the early stages of the development of the project. Some companies, if they don't have knowledge or if they don't have enough budget on doing the non-functional testing, so they won't start with the non-functional testing until and unless the project is going to be deployed on production. So let us assume, for example, in this case, so they are like this QA team is going to perform only the functional testing in this case. So what that functional testing team is going to do is they are going to develop the test strategy, as well as they are going to provide some quality standards. And finally, they need to provide some bug-free delivery. So they need to identify if any bugs are there in the application that is already developed. And if at all, if that bugs are there, they need to open some tickets on Jira and that need to be assigned to the development team. And that development team should work on those issues and they need to resolve those issues. Again, that particular update is going to be provided on the Jira, and this QA team need to track that particular Jira ticket and they need to retest that and finalize that whether that issue or bug is resolved or not. So that is what the work of QA team here. So once the QA team is going to complete the testing, then they are going to inform the DevOps team that our testing is done and we are good with this particular application. So we are good to go with the production here. So now the DevOps team is going to come into the picture and they are going to handle the infrastructure requirements, that is the production infrastructure requirements, as well as they are going to create the deployment pipelines for us, and they are going to understand the scalability and monitoring related things. So finally, right, with the help of the DevOps team and after getting the permission from the project manager, okay, so we are going to deploy the application into the production, right? We are going to means DevOps team is going to deploy the application into production, or we can simply say that application is going to be online. Okay, so application is going to be live for sure, and the normal user can easily access that application from anywhere. So in this, right, this project manager role is also very, very important. So what this project manager role is going to do is like this project managers, he's going to set up the meeting facilitation, as well as the he's going to provide the proper project roadmap, and he's going to keep on monitoring throughout this process in each and every phase. And finally, the client team engagement is also going to be done by the project manager itself. He's going to take care of the budget and everything, right? So this is what the whole project discussion related information. So once if a client is going to come up with some requirement, that requirement need to be handled properly and the end software product is going to be provided to the client. So in this example, so our client is related to retail domain. So for this particular client, the requirement is to develop one e-commerce application. Okay. So ignore my handwriting. I'm writing with mouse. So here, one e-commerce application need to be developed. So that is what the requirement for this particular client. And already software team, okay, like business analyst got all the requirements and UI UX team designed all the screens and everything. And development team, like they have developed the backend code, they have integrated the database and everything. And QA team already done the functional testing for this particular application. So now that application is in production. Later at some point of time, right, they started seeing some issues. So initially for this particular application, they didn't observe any issues. Why? Because the initial user traffic on this application is very less. So as it is a new application, right, so less users are accessing initially this particular application. So they didn't find any issues over there. But after some time, like after 1 year or so, this application got some good name. Okay, this particular e-commerce application is a popular one right now. And immediately what happened, more users are going to access the application here. That's when they started seeing issues here. Okay, so what happens once the application is live? That we need to understand, right? Once the application is live, then whatever the code that the developers developed, they are going to keep it on this central server and users are going to access. These users are nothing but real-time users. So the users are going to access that particular application by sending the request to the server. And what this server, central server is going to do is, it is going to send the response back after understanding that request, processing that request. This server, central server is going to send the response back to the user. So if one or two users are accessing the application, then there is no issue. So as the user load is increasing every day here because of some sales or whatever the options that this e-commerce platform is going to give to the users, right? Because of that popularity, the user load is keep on increasing day by day on this application. So because of that, like they started seeing issues called server, their server got overloaded and their application got crashed sometimes. So this kind of issues they are not expecting over there, but they have faced this kind of issue. For example, one particular sale day. So obviously, what is going to happen if at all if they are going to face these kind of issues, uh, there will be some revenue loss, right? On one particular big billion day sale kind of day, if at all if more users are accessing that application and if the servers are overloaded or crashed, then they'll see a huge loss, right? So that is the reason why the performance testing is came into the picture here. Till now, any doubts in this part? Are we good? Please confirm. If you are silent, like, yeah, okay. So if you are silent, I can understand that as yes, you are good. So I'll proceed further. Okay. So as it is good, like let's go and try to understand what the performance testing is going to do here, right? So functional testing is already done on this application, but we are observing this particular server overload issues or application crash issues whenever if more users are accessing this application. So that's where the performance testing coming into the picture here. So we need to understand what performance testing is. So performance testing is nothing but it is going to measure how fast, stable, and scalable your application is under different load conditions. So as we already discussed, right, your application is going to be there on server and users are going to access this application, right? So users are going to access this application, user one, user two. So lot of users, okay, up to user n. So multiple users are going to access this application, and for each and every user, this server need to provide the response back. If at all, if this server is not providing the response back to this particular user, then there is some issue, and this user is not going to visit your application again. So performance testing is nothing but we are going to simply run our test executions with high user load. We are going to make sure that we are going to send more number of requests to the server. And at that time, we are going to verify whether our server is fast enough, as well as stable enough, as well as scalable or not. So that we are going to test it as a part of this performance testing process. And this is very, very important type of testing that every company needed here whenever if they are expecting more user load on their application. So for example, right, it's like doing performance testing is nothing but it's simply testing a car's speed, fuel efficiency, as well as the durability here before launching it on road. So before launching the car, right, obviously we are going to verify the car speed as well as fuel efficiency, like what is the mileage of that particular car, as well as durability, right, how safe it is and everything. So we are simply going to test this car while we are going to launch that particular car on road, right? In the same way, before launching the application, it's always better to do the performance testing along with the functional testing. But if at all, if that budget is not there at the time of like development phase as well as QA functional testing phase, then once after launching the application in production, if they are going to face the issues, then they will come and ask us to do the performance testing here. So generally, who is going to handle this performance testing is nothing but QA team. Quality assurance team is going to take care of this performance testing. So always remember one important thing, that this performance testing is going to be done once after completing the functional testing here. And the main aim of functional testing is to identify the bugs. So the main aim of functional testing is to identify the bugs, whereas the main aim of performance testing is not to identify the bugs, but to identify the performance bottlenecks. So the main aim of performance testing is to identify the performance bottlenecks. So we are not functional testers. We are not going to identify the bugs. Identifying the bugs is not our cup of tea. So our concentration is going to be mainly on the performance bottlenecks. So what are performance bottlenecks? We'll discuss. But before that, we need to understand few more points, and then we'll try to understand what are bottlenecks. Yeah. Hope what is performance testing is clear. So in a simple way, right? In a high level, we are going to put some user load on the application, and we are going to verify how that particular application is going to behave, right? Application is going to behave in the sense how that code is going to work, as well as how the servers which are holding that code will work, and how the user experience also. Here, both the things are matters. User experience is also a matter here, as well as your server related health is also matter, and how your application is behaving is also matter here. So we need to concentrate on all these parts while doing the performance testing. Now we need to understand like why it is important, right? As I already mentioned, no one likes the slow websites. Like if more number of users are accessing your application, obviously, if your servers are not that much capable, then your website is going to be very slow. Your getting response from the server is going to be very slow here. And in the same way, if the application is going to give the bad performance, then like we are going to lose the users as well as obviously revenue here in this case. And finally, a 1 second delay in the page load time can reduce the conversions by 7% here. So during a sale, like Big Billion Day kind of sale, right? So if more number of users are accessing that application, if your application is very slow, then if there is some delay means obviously the conversions rate is going to be very, very less. So you will see a huge loss at that time too. So that is the reason why in order to avoid these particular issues, we need to do the performance testing of an application. Now, the next part and the major part that we need to know is the performance testing life cycle. So each and every type of testing, right? Like especially the functional testing or non-functional testing, they need to follow one testing life cycle process. So functional testing team, they will follow software testing life cycle process. Okay. And performance testing team, they are also going to follow the software testing life cycle process only, but they have one separate life cycle process that is nothing but performance testing life cycle. We are going to simply call it as PTLC in short form. So in like this particular performance testing life cycle process is nothing but it's a simply a roadmap for us. So what exactly that we need to do and what are the different steps that we need to follow in order to test the application here. So that are going to be divided in different stages here. So every performance testing life cycle starts with the first stage called the risk assessment stage. In the risk assessment stage, there will be some team evaluation on the application. For example, we have an e-commerce application and we are trying to test that. We are trying to do the performance testing of that e-commerce application. So in that e-commerce application, what are all the major flows that we need to test? And what are all the risks that we are going to face? So that need to be evaluated first. So that is going to be done in the risk assessment stage. Understand the application flows and to understand what are all the risks that we may expect or that we may identify over there and how to mitigate those issues and what particular flows need to be tested as a part of this performance testing and which particular flows we can exclude as a part of this performance testing. So that particular discussion we can do in the risk assessment stage, and we are going to finalize the flows here in this case. So once that particular stage is done, then we'll jump into the next stage, that is the NFR gathering stage. NFR means non-functional requirement gathering. So again, right, testing is of two types, functional testing and non-functional testing. So performance testing is going to come under the non-functional type of testing. And whatever the requirements that we are going to gather here in order to do the performance testing, we are going to call that as NFR, non-functional requirements. So in the NFR gathering stage, we are going to discuss with the client here directly. So BA, business analyst team is going to schedule one call with client and we are going to uh, prepare one document in this case with some set of questions and we are going to sit with the client and we are going to put all our questions in front of the client. And client need to provide some information for all the questions, whatever that we are going to ask. And also he's going to provide his insights along with that. What exactly his expectation is, what kind of issues that he faced during some particular sale. And he's going to ask us like how to overcome those issues also. We are going to have one discussion with the client. And finally, after discussing with the client, we'll come up with some NFRs here, non-functional requirements here, and that need to be documented here. And that document, we are going to call it as NFR document. In this, we are going to get all the requirements that we need to track. So once after getting all the requirements here, we are going to jump into the next stage, that is the test planning stage. In the test planning stage, we are going to give the objective outline for our testing, as well as tool selection is also going to be done here. So again, in order to do the performance testing, we are going to have multiple tools like load runner, JMeter, Neoload, Gatling. There are multiple performance testing tools that are available in market. So out of all the tools, which tool is feasible for our application? That we need to understand. So how we are going to do the tool selection is nothing but we are going to do the tool selection by following a process called POC. We are going to do POC on that particular application with the help of the available performance testing tools like JMeter, Load Runner, and NeoLoad. So out of all the tools, like our JMeter tool is going to be the open source tool, and Load Runner, NeoLoad, and other tools are it's a paid tools. We need to purchase license for those particular tools. There are free tools also available apart from JMeter, but those are not that much feasible. So out of all the open source tools or free tools that are available in market, JMeter is one of the top tool which is acquiring the market right now. And the tool selection is going to be done here. And also the resource allocation is also going to be done in the test planning stage. Like how many resources are there, what are the timelines in which we are going to complete this particular performance testing, right? When we are going to do the test executions, what are all the different types of test executions that we are planning to do. So that entire information is going to be placed in this particular test, discussed and placed in this test planning stage. So the output of this particular test planning stage is the test plan document. So that entire information is going to be placed under one document. That document, we are going to call it as the test plan document here. And once the test planning stage is done, then we are going to jump into the next stage, that is the test scripting stage. So in the test scripting stage, we are going to do the script creations with the help of the tools, whatever the tool that got finalized here, right? So once after doing the POC, again, we are going to discuss with the client and we are going to show that POC document to the client with all the insights. And client is going to say that, okay, I'm okay to go with JMeter means, then we'll choose the JMeter as our tool here. If client is ready to go with any other tool, even though if it is licensed, then we'll go with that tool. So as a part of our training, we are going with the uh, JMeter tool, right? So that is the reason why in the POC, our client is accepted with our POC document with JMeter tool. So we are going with the JMeter tool here. So with the help of the JMeter tool, what we are going to do here is we are going to simply start doing the script creation. So that particular script creation process is going to happen in the test scripting stage. So with the help of the tool, we are going to start recording the application which we want to test and the flows. What are the different flows that are already decided in the risk assessment stage, right? So those flows we are going to record here and we are going to create the scripts for all those flows. And also we are going to test that particular flows with multiple users here. We are going to test that particular flows with multiple users here. So all those flows are working fine or not with multiple users. That also we are going to test here. And again, right, I'm just giving this on a high level. We'll go with each and every stage and we'll create the documents and we'll see how exactly this process is going to happen in our coming sessions. So as today is the first session, I'm going to give you some high level overview. And going forward, we are going to see each and every part in detail. And the same process we are going to follow going forward, and we are going to do the performance testing of one e-commerce application going forward. So that is the reason why I'm taking the example of e-commerce application only. So once the scripts are developed and once the user simulation is done, Then immediately we'll jump into the next stage, that is the workload modeling stage. So in the workload modeling stage, right, uh, we are going to use one formula called Little's law. So with the help of that particular Little's law formula, we are going to calculate one major thing called pacing value. So the requirement here is to reach the required volume. So in order to reach the required transaction volume, we need to calculate one value called pacing. So what is pacing, that we are going to discuss in our coming sessions. But for now, just remember that in order to reach the transaction volume is nothing but, let us say if some 1,000 users are visiting that application and they are doing some 1,000 registrations during that peak duration, okay, during that particular sale time. So client is going to say in the NFR document that so my expectation is to reach that 1,000 transactions, 1,000 times user registration should happen is what my expectation. So then you need to replicate the same kind of scenario here. So you need to use some user load and you need to reach some required transaction volume as per the client requirement here. So in order to reach that required transaction volume with the specified user load, we need to calculate a value called pacing. That value we need to add in our JMeter scripts, so that at the time of test execution, we are going to reach the required volume with the specified user load here. That is what the workload modeling process is on a high level. Again, we are going to create one specific document here in this case, and we are going to calculate the pacing with the help of Little's law formula. And what is that Little's law formula and everything, we'll see in our next sessions. And once the workload modeling part is done, then we'll jump into the next stage, that is the test execution and result analysis stage. So here in this particular stage, we are going to do the different types of test executions, performance test executions, like load test, stress test, spike test, endurance test, right? So volume test. There are a lot of tests that we can do in this particular stage. And once like the test is done, we are going to identify, like before the test itself, we need to identify some metrics that we need to monitor. So we need to say like this particular test went well or not, right? How we can say that this particular test went well or not? Based on the metrics. So there are few metrics that we need to concentrate, okay, that we need to look into in order to tell whether our test went well or not. So what are those metrics? Okay, that we'll see in our next slides. But for now, let us assume like we need to gather some metrics and we need to look into those metrics, whether those metrics are within the range or not. So if those metrics are within the range, then I can say like with some X user load, my application is working fine and my application servers are good. If at all, if we are seeing some issues, if these metrics are not within the limits, then obviously there are some bottlenecks that we may expect. Because of that only, these metrics are not within the limits. So obviously we need to do the bottleneck analysis here. We got some issue and we need to identify and we need to analyze what that issue is. And after analyzing all the issues, we need to provide that information to the development team, and development team need to resolve that issue. And again, we need to do some test executions here. And finally, if everything is good, after identifying the bottleneck analysis and after resolving those issues, and if everything is good, then we'll go for the test reporting stage, wherein we are going to provide our final report to the client. And also we'll inform the client if any other optimizations required, that also we are going to inform it to the client. So this is what on a high level we are going to do it as a part of this performance testing life cycle. Any questions here? I know it's a lengthy concept, but this is the key concept that you guys need to know and you guys need to follow in order, like while doing the performance testing process. Any questions here? Yes.
Like, will we be covering that enough for gathering and all
Yes.
separate
Yes.
like in detail?
For each and every stage, we are going to take one separate day. And again, for test scripting stage, like we'll take more time here. Okay. As well as test execution stage will take more time, and test reporting and analysis like will take more time. But for the remaining risk assessment, we'll take 1 day for risk assessment, one particular session for NFR gathering, wherein we are going to create one NFR document. So like how we are going to create in real time, right, in our companies. So the same document I'll show you, and I'll also explain you what are all the questions that we need to ask. And we are going to do hands-on on the application, whatever that we are going to test. And in one more day for test plan document, and one more document we need to create like an traversal flow document. Okay, so for this test plan document and traversal flow document will cover on 1 day, and workload modeling, one separate session is there. And for test scripting, like we'll take more time for test scripting. Why? Because here our JMeter tool is going to be introduced, and we are going to create the scripts, and we are going to do all the enhancements here. Okay. And also for test execution and result analysis also it will take time, and report again 1 or 2 days for reporting part. Each and every stage is going to be covered in detail in our coming sessions. Okay. Any other questions? Okay. So considering that as no, let me quickly jump into the metrics. Right here, if you remember, we discussed about metric collection. At the time of test execution, we need to say that our test went well or not. Right? How we are going to identify that is nothing but we are going to verify few metrics, and if those metrics are within the limits during the test execution time, then we are good, and we can say like our test went well. If those metrics are not within the limits, obviously we need to say that some bottlenecks are there. So that bottleneck analysis we need to do. That's what we discussed here. But before understanding what exactly the bottleneck and how we need to do the bottleneck analysis, we need to understand what are all the metrics that we need to look into. So without knowing that, like again, it's of no use. So that is the reason why let's jump into that part first, and let's try to understand what are all the different types of performance testing metrics that are available. And we'll try to understand a few metrics in today's session. And with that, like I'm going to end the session. So I'll take the session for next 15 more minutes, and we'll end the session after discussing these metrics part. So next slide is related to performance testing metrics. So generally, right, there are two categories, I can say performance testing metrics categories, main categories. One is the client side performance testing metrics, and the second one is the server side performance testing metrics. So what is meant by client side performance testing metrics, and what are server side performance testing metrics? That we need to understand here. So we'll jump into each and every type of metric. First, we'll start with client-side metrics. So what are client-side performance testing metrics? Is nothing but like in terms of user perspective, what are all the metrics that are important? So let us say you are trying to open one movie streaming app like Netflix, for example. Okay, so like at the time of particular usage of this particular app, so you need to mainly focus on like from client perspective. Okay, that is the user perspective. You need to focus on how fast and smooth this particular application appears to the user. That is what the main focus should be. So from the user end, that is what the expectation, right? So if I am paying some amount to some company, okay, or to their app, their expectation is they need to access that application as fast as they can, and they need to have some smooth user experience over there. So that is what the expectation here. So the final part that I can say here is like the expectation in terms of the client side is how fast the home page is going to load of this for this particular application, right? How quickly a selected movie starts playing here, and whether the video lags are there or not while playing this particular video. These kind of things are very, very important for us in terms of user perspective. So we should not always concentrate on server level only, but we need to concentrate on the user level also. So from the user perspective, these are the three things that every user is going to verify, or every user is going to concentrate. So how we are going to say like we are not going to have these kind of issues in our application? Means we need to simply identify few metrics which are related to this client side, and we need to follow up those metrics here. So the first metric that I want to introduce here is the first contentful paint. So listen to this part, like it is very, very important. We need to understand with an example here. So the first metric, the first client side metric that we are going to discuss is the first contentful paint, in short form FCP. So what this first contentful paint is going to give us is nothing but when I need something, right? When I need to access this website, right? So let us say I'm trying to hit this particular website. So what is the first visible element, okay, that I'm going to see? And within how much time I'm going to see this particular first visible element? That is important for me. So when I do something, right, after doing that, like I need to see something, right? So within how much time, right, after hitting the enter on the, like after, like let us say I opened my browser, okay, and I entered some URL. After hitting this particular enter, right? So within how much time the first visible element appears on the screen? So that is going to give this first contentful paint. Here in terms of time only. Remember, first contentful paint is nothing but in terms of time we are going to verify here. So the first visible element, like how long it took to display on the screen. So that is nothing but your first contentful paint. So for example, if you are opening an e-commerce website, right? So whenever if you hit enter, the logo, any kind of logo will appear as a first element, right? So how long it took to load this particular logo or to appear this particular logo on the screen. So that is going to give the first contentful paint for us. So good first contentful paint is like always under 1.8 seconds. If the first visible element is loading within 1.8 seconds, then I can say like it is a good FCP, good first contentful paint. If it is over 3 seconds, right? If this visible element, first visible element is taking time more than 3 seconds means obviously it is slow FCP. Slow FCPs are not acceptable, right? Always it should be less than 1.8 seconds is what the expectation for us. These are the standard values, guys, for an e-commerce application, you can say. So whenever you are trying to access one particular application means your expectation is your first visual element should be should load less than 1.8 seconds. Right? If it is within 1.8 seconds, if this visible element is loading means, then you can say your application is good. So this is what the first metric that we need to look into. Coming to the second metric, largest contentful paint. So what it indicates is when is the main content loaded. So in the last case, first visible element, like in order to load first visible element, how long it take, right? So here, in order to load the largest visible element, how long it is taking to load this particular largest visible element. For example, some sort of headline, okay, or some sort of main image in that application. How long it is taking to load that particular largest visible element. That indicates this largest contentful paint. Load here is nothing but fully load. Okay, completely it should load. So let us say you are trying to access one news website. So some images or some articles in that particular website, right? It will take some time to load based on the image content, image size and everything, right? So again, we are going to call those kind of elements as largest elements. So how long it took to load those largest elements is what is going to be given by this largest contentful paint. If largest contentful paint is slow, then users will see a blank page for too long. Obviously, user will got frustrated over here and they will jump into another application here. So good LCP is always below 2.5 seconds, and slow LCP means if it is above 2.5 seconds, we can say it as slow LCP. If within the range also, that is fine, but always it's better to maintain less than 2.5 seconds. Greater than 2.4 seconds is not acceptable, and within 2.5 to 4 seconds is also not acceptable. If your application is showing like within 2.5 to 4 seconds, then you need to identify what exactly the issue is here, and you need to work on that issue with the development team, and they need to do some changes in their code, and finally we should make sure that it is going to bring back within 2.5 seconds or not. That is what the intention here. Okay. So the next client side metric that we are going to look into is the time to interactive. So when can I start using this particular page? Time to interactive is going to simply ask us or give us when I can start using this particular page. So this is the time until the page is fully interactive. So for examples, in your application, if any buttons or links are there, right? So within how much time, okay, that button is going to appear to you or that link is going to appear to you, and also you can click on that link, right? Just appearing itself is not acceptable here. We need to click on that, then only it is going to work, right? So if button is visible but you can't click on that button, means it's of no use. So for example, you are opening one food delivery app, right? So you are able to see the menu, but you can't click anything on that particular menu, right? So obviously you'll feel annoying here, right? Uh, so the good TTI here should be always below 3.8 seconds, and slow TTI is above 5 seconds. So these are the different client side metrics that we need to look into. And again, few more are there. We'll quickly look into those things. Next one is the cumulative layout shift. Okay. So what it indicates is, does the page jump around or not? So let us say most of you would have faced this during some particular applications, like during visiting some particular applications, right? All of a sudden, some pop-ups will come. Okay. Some ads will load into your application. So let us say you are trying to read an article, right? In the middle, all of a sudden, one ad pop-up will come, right? So because of that, you are unable to read that, or even that ad also will load very slowly, and you can't click, you can't even close that ad within the time, right? So that kind of issues we should not face. So what this cumulative layout shift is going to measure is, it is going to measure how much the layout shifts unexpectedly while loading this particular page. So sometimes what will happen, right? Because of this loading of these ads, so you are trying to or you are trying to click some particular checkout page or something on that application, but at that time, all of a sudden, a pop-up came into the picture, and you are going to click that ad, and that ad will open instead of the checkout page. That is going to be annoying for us, right? If at all, if we are going to see those kind of cumulative layout shifts in that application, we are not going to visit that application again. So always, even though if we have ads on that application, okay, always the good cumulative layout shift should be below 0.1 seconds, so that user can simply click or close that particular ad, and they can move to the next screen. If it is above 0.25 seconds, then obviously it is not acceptable. That is what the cumulative layout shift means. And the next one is total blocking time. So total blocking time is nothing but how long is the page frozen. So it is going to measure delays caused by heavy JavaScript executions, which is going to block the interactions here. So for example, you are trying to open an email app and it is going to freeze before you can type the message. Sometimes you may face these kind of issues. Why? Because on the back end, more number of JavaScripts are going to run, and out of those JavaScripts, like few JavaScripts are too heavy, which are in size. So because of that heavy JavaScripts, your applications may freeze sometimes, and you can't process further up to some duration. So that is not acceptable, right? So always we need to make sure that even though if heavy JavaScript is there on our application, still it should load within 300 milliseconds is what the expectation. If it is taking more than 600 milliseconds of time, then I can say like it is a bad total blocking time. And we need to again work with developers on this part, and we need to try to simply reduce the JavaScript size and everything by doing some tweaks to that JavaScript. So this is nothing but your total blocking time. And the next one, which is related to the client side metric, is the interaction to next page. So this indicates like how quickly does the page react. So it is going to measure like how long the page takes to respond after a user clicking on something. So for example, you clicked on play button in the YouTube channel, for example, right? So if it is taking a second before the video starts, then you'll wait. Like if it is going to, like even second is also very high, right? Our expectation is once if we click, it should work. That is what the expectation nowadays, right? So in order to get the smooth experience and responsive experience, always the interaction to next paint value should be less than 200 milliseconds here. It should not be more than like 500 milliseconds again. If it is beyond 500 milliseconds, that is not acceptable. And the last client side metrics that we are going to look is speed index. Speed index represents like how fast does the visible content loaded here. So it is going to measure how quickly the visible part of the page loads over the time. So for example, if you are visiting one shopping website, right? So how long it took for the header to load? Okay. Generally, if you are visiting any e-commerce application, headers will load first, right? So within how much time the visible content is loaded here, the header is loaded here, and then images are going to load, and finally the product description pages will load, where the products are going to be visible, right? So in this way, this is going to load here, right? So how fast does this visible content loaded is going to be taken care by this speed index here. So always we need to make sure that speed index should be less than 3 seconds. It should not be more than 5 seconds. So these are all the different client side metrics that we are going to take into consideration. And at the time of test execution also, we need to make sure that these values are within the limits or not. These metrics are within the limits or not. Hope it is clear. What are all the different client side metrics? I know like this is for the first time, few of you are listening these metrics. But again, right, I'll share this video and you can go through the video. Then only you'll come to some clear picture on this particular client side metrics part. Okay, so let me take like 5 more minutes and I'll close the session after discussing this server side metrics. Or I think it's already 7:33. Okay. Yeah, but let me complete it. I'll just take like 5 more minutes and I will close the session. I don't want to close this abruptly here in the middle. Okay, so let's jump into the server side metrics here. So server side metrics are nothing but we are going to look from the backend perspective here. So client side metrics means user perspective. Server side metrics means backend perspective. That means server side perspective here. So server side performance metrics measures how efficiently the backend or server handles the request before sending the content to the user. So here server side metrics are nothing but on the backend perspective. Okay. So whenever if we are sending some request to the server, how your server is handling those requests before sending the content back to the user. Is it handling those requests efficiently, or is it handling those requests based on conditionally? Like again, because of some high CPU memory, okay, those kind of usages. Like is it taking time to send those requests back, so responses back to the user, right? So we need to verify those kind of things here in this case. Okay, always we need to understand one real life analogy, right? So in this case, like let us try to understand by with this example, like you are trying to order one pizza. So you can place the order, right? And the restaurant is going to prepare and deliver that, right? So in this case, you are the user and the restaurant is the server. Obviously, right, faster preparation is equals to quicker delivery. So if your server is able to respond properly, okay, or within very less time, then only you'll get your order very quickly, right? So in the same way here also, if your restaurant is going to prepare the food quickly, then you're going to get it delivered quickly to you, right? So that is the reason we need to understand few of the server side metrics also, which are very, very important and that we need to monitor during our test executions. So few of the server side metrics are, the first one is the time to first byte, that is TTFB. So what this will do is it is going to indicate like how fast does the server respond. For example, right, it is we can say the definition as like time taken for the server to send the first byte of data here. So TTFB is nothing but time taken to first byte, right? Time to first byte or time taken to first byte, right? So in this metric, right? So we are going to measure the time taken for getting the first byte of data from the server. So you are trying to open one banking app or any kind of app, any kind of e-commerce application or whatever may be the application, right? So it is taking like too long here to load that particular page, or if you're opening one banking app, if it is taking like too long to open your account balance page, then obviously we can say like server is slow, right? So when we can say like it is good means whenever if your time to first byte value is below 0.8 seconds. Okay, you send some request to the server. Okay, and within 0.8 seconds, if we got the first byte of data from the server, then we can say like our application is good. Otherwise, if it is taking more than 1.5 seconds, then I can say like my application is slow here. That is what the time to first byte is. And the next metric that we need to know is the request per second, or request per second and transactions per second. Both are almost all same, right? So what these represents are nothing but like how much load can the server handle here. So how many requests that you are going to send per second. Okay, how many transactions that you are going to do per second, right? So based on this, you can measure your server capability. So these will measure like how many requests that the server can process within 1 second. Okay, what is request? Okay, what are transactions? We are going to discuss it in our coming sessions. But for now, just remember that a request is nothing but whatever the URL that you are trying to hit, right? It will go to the server. So let's consider that as one request, and also sub request, embedded resources. Lot of different things are also going to be there. We'll discuss that in tomorrow's session, right? What is transaction, what is request, and everything we'll clearly discuss in tomorrow's session going forward. Okay. So here in our case, right, how many requests that the server can handle is very, very important that we need to know, right? So again, right, a website handling 100 users per second has higher RPS than one handling the 10 users, right? Obviously, if our expectation is to handle the more user load only. Why? Because with less user load, obviously every server will work. But whereas if more user load is accessing your application, then only the server overloaded scenarios will come into the picture. So our requirement is to verify whether our server is handling these many requests or not. So that is the reason why this is one of the client side metric, sorry, server side metric here that we need to look into. And the next one that we need to look into is the latency and response time. So that means how long it takes to get a reply from the server, right? So here the definition is the time taken for the request to reach the server and return a response. So once after sending the request, how long it takes to reach the server and to get the response back. That is nothing but your response time, right? So that is very, very important. So for example, you are sending one message on WhatsApp, right? And you are waiting for the double tick to appear, right? So immediately after sending the message, you are going to see one single tick. But once if you got the response that the receiver all got the particular message or not, then you will see two ticks, right? So how fast this particular double ticks appear on your WhatsApp message. So that indicates your response time here, right? Always this latency and response times, the expect, like again, response times will vary, but latency always expectation is less than 200 milliseconds. And if it is above 200 milliseconds, which is not acceptable, the response times will depend on the type of request that you are going to send here. If that request is having like more images kind of thing, then it will, the response time for those for that particular request may be high. That is acceptable, right? If that request is not having any images or JavaScript files, then it will load very quickly. So that is what the expectation. So those things we'll discuss clearly going forward. I'll show you one application, whatever that we are going to test in tomorrow's session, and we'll discuss on that application itself. And the next metric that we need to look into is the error rate. How often do the request fails here, right? So that means percentage of failed requests due to server crashes or timeouts or errors here. So let us say you are trying to book one ticket here. So whenever if you are seeing like server error means, then obviously it is a headache for us, right? So these server errors, we should not see server crashes, we should not see timeouts, or we should not get unwanted errors from the server. And that error percentage should be always below 1% is acceptable. And sometimes it will go up to 3% is also acceptable. But if it is above 5%, that is not acceptable at all. So this is one of the server side metric that you need to look into. And the next one is the CPU and memory utilization. So how overloaded is the server, that you need to understand. So how like it is going to measure like how much of the server processing power and memory is in use here. So how much CPU utilization is happening, how much memory utilization is happening when you are running the app continuously, okay, or when you are sending more requests to the server. That is going to be measured here. Obviously, the CPU and memory should be always below 70% is acceptable. If it is above 70%, right, there are chances that your server will be overloaded and your server may get crash also here. So that is the reason why this is one more metric that we need to look into during the test executions here from the server point of view. And the final one, I think one more thing is there, right? Yeah. So the next one is the throughput. Okay. So how much data can the server handle is going to be given by the throughput here. So this throughput is nothing but it is going to measure the total data processed per second. Okay, how much data processed within 1 second, how much data we got or we received from the server within 1 second is going to be given by this throughput here. So high throughput is nothing but better performance, we can say. So whenever if you have high throughput, obviously you can see the HD videos on YouTube kind of applications, right? So better performance, I can say. So high throughput is what the expectation here. And the final one is the thread pool utilization. Okay, and the final one is the thread pool utilization. So thread pool utilization is nothing but are server threads overloaded. So for example, right, I'll take an example, right? So example here is you're a call center agent, like you're having a call center, right? So who is handling by only 5 agents, but to your call center, if 50 calls are coming, right? Obviously, there will be some delay in attending those calls, right? In the same way, if too many requests are handled by the server at once, right? How long it is taking here to serve that particular threads with a proper response. That is what important here. So that particular duration, we are going to call it as like thread pool utilization here. Our expectation is there should not be any queue here. Our expectation is there should not be any queue. So whenever if the request came, immediately we need to give the response back, or within some time frame we need to give the response. If the queue is high, then obviously uh, there won't be more users on our application. Okay, so that is the reason why these are the different server side metrics that we need to look into going forward. Okay, so I know it's a, lengthy session here, but I just want to cover all these points before ending this session. Now the Q&A session is open. Okay, so any questions you have, like please feel free to ask here.